Hi everyone, welcome to CFSI CyberFence webinar, the first of 9 webinars. I hope everyone can see us. I hope everyone can hear us. Great. So again, some feedback that everyone can see us. So yep, I am Shiva Parasharam and I'm the owner of the Computer Forensics and Security Institute. And here with me today we have Mr. Alex Sam, the owner of Tier 10, and he's also a big shot in Curacao and St. Martin. And we have Bossman himself, Mr. Anish Bechu, who I often call the director, but apparently he's the head. He's best known as the head of the Trinidad and Tobago CSIRT, right? Chief instigator as well. So I just want to run through a couple things quickly. Thank you all so much for joining. The last time I checked, we had 256 registrations. I've never even attended one with that many registrations, far less hosted one. All right, so thanks for joining us. I know most of you have been here for quite a few years from since maybe 2021 when we now started. So I started the CyberFence initiative when my dad passed away because he was a teacher as well. He was a great teacher. Both my parents were teachers. But losing my dad was really tough for me and I wanted a way to just give back a little bit and sort of remember him. So I thought, all right, let me just start this initiative, which is the CFSI CyberFence. So we hope to do a lot more with CyberFence and not just have it be in webinars. For Cybersecurity Awareness Month for October this year, we have everything virtual. Next year, we're hoping to do something physical and virtual at the same time, but we're actually hoping to register CyberFence as a nonprofit organization and do a lot more charity work, give back to a lot more training for free, stuff like that. So we hope to get some sponsors and stuff, but that's a 2026 issue. We hope to have everyone here on board. So we'll do an entire like a chapter sort of, right? So that all our members, you get access to lots of good stuff. I don't intend to charge more than like 15, 20 US per year, if so much, depending on sponsors that we get. All right, so this is just the first of 9 webinars to come for the CFSI CyberFence Cybersecurity Month of 2025, right? I thought about just doing one, and then I was like, why not just do a few each week, right, and go wild. At the end of each webinar, you do get a certificate of participation. Nothing too fancy, but at least it might be something to carry to HR and show that you are keeping on top of things. So away we go, right? This flyer that I've had this posted on all the socials on Instagram, on Facebook. We're not on TikTok, on LinkedIn especially, right? So this is just the first one. You have 9 of them there. You can have a look at the dates. If you head to our website, cfsi.co, that's where you can register. Registration is free, certs are free, everything is free for this CyberFence webinar as we have it so far. So quite a few good things coming up. So today, we want to just talk about a few things. I will be talking a bit quickly because we only have 1 hour, and usually previously the CyberFence webinars were like 2 to 2.5 hours, right? But we just don't want to go past that 1 o'clock. So we have a few things. I think the actual content slides might only be about 6, but we have a lot of tables where we want to do some comparisons and stuff. But this webinar is really to focus on the Caribbean threats and the ransomware attacks that have taken place in the Caribbean and CARICOM also, right? So that's why we have Anish here in particular, because Anish deals with a lot of this from the public side, also from the private sector as well. Everyone is free to reach out to the very brilliant team, I have to say, at the TTC Search. Shout out to everybody at the TTC Search team. All right. We have some hardcore talent. I will stand up for TTC Search and even the cybercrime unit any day, right? I know that sometimes they get a lot of flack, but I believe me when I tell you they are doing the best with what they have. All right, so just a couple quick things about CFSI. It's free, so I just thought I'd promote CFSI a little bit. There are about maybe 8 or 9 of us in particular. Alex is just one of the members. Anish is an honorary member of CFSI. We have to send you a t-shirt and stuff. So, right, but we have Leslie, Dale, Johnny, Jason, Rashid. Who else I forget?
Well,
Oh, Joel. Sorry, I forgot Joel. Ricardo. We have a good few people out there, right? So we offer enterprise risk consultancy. CFSI does a lot of consultancy for some local companies, some regional companies in the financial, regional to international, with lots of different sectors that we have there, right? We do vulnerability assessment, risk assessment, pen testing, DFIR, even ransomware recovery at some point if we could. One of my specialties is dark web threat intelligence and also advanced cybersecurity training. On the slide there, you'll see that we are an EC Council accredited training center. We are the only EC Council accredited training center in the Caribbean. If you're looking for courses like the Certified Ethical Hacker, Computer Hacking Forensic Investigator, even the Certified Chief Information Security Officer, which was one of the toughest exams I've ever done in my life, right? We are the only training and testing center for those in the Caribbean. I'm proud to say it's been about 14 years. A lot of people may not know about us, but yeah, it has been a long time. All right. We wrote the book on it. I wrote all of those books. I co-authored the pen testing book with Alex, and Alex was also one of the technical reviewers for all of my digital forensics books. Thank you very much for keeping me sane throughout all of those, Alex. Someone asked me if I would be writing a fifth book anytime soon, and I told them no, there's no space for it on this slide. But you know, I'll be doing that. All right. So if you want to reach out to any of us, please feel free to add us on LinkedIn. I think we usually add most people, right? So yeah, just look for Shiva Parashram. Here's Mr. Alex Sam, who is also the owner of Tier 10 Technologies, and he's a big shot for BDO up and down the islands in the Caribbean. And we have Mr. Anish Bechu there, all fancy looking in his shirt and tie and stuff. Yeah, he's always very well dressed and prepared. So he's the head of Trinidad and Tobago's national CISO. That is no small feat, especially Anish is actually pretty young. I'm not going to disclose his age, but for someone who's accomplished so much so soon, congrats. That, like I said, that's no small feat, right? So something a bit interesting or a bit fun. So someone sent this to me once, right? Where everyone says, don't go on the dark web, and that's literally three of us right there. We always dabbling and across the dark web. That's where all of the scary stuff is. Big disclaimer, I do not recommend that you all try to go ahead or jump on the dark web if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not experienced, if you don't have yourself locked down, your devices locked down. Me in particular, I use a completely separate machine and a completely separate internet connection to get to the dark web. Why? Because I'm always on a bunch of forums. I am always on the actual sites of these ransomware groups, right? So I am terrified of them. I'll just tell you plain and simple out there. I am really terrified. Even sometimes when I read about groups like Killing and Lockbit and stuff, it makes me very uneasy. Right? Someone asked me why I'm so obsessed with ransomware. I don't know. I won't say it's an obsession, but it's just I'm really big into research into particular. Alex, just tell me I'm lying.
It's a healthy obsession.
It's borderline.
I'll go borderline. Right. So we want to jump into it one time, right? So I did upload the ransomware, the 2024 Caribbean ransomware reports and handouts and stuff. I'm not sure if you might be seeing it, right? But if there's a handout section on your screen, take a look and you'll see the Caribbean ransomware report for 2024. And you will also see the service brochure for CFSI, right? This entire thing is brought to you by CFSI. I just thought I'd do a little bit of marketing as well. And if anyone is interested in some of the services, well, you can contact me or have a look at it. But the ransomware report that Alex and I did in particular for last year, it has all the information about these 13 incidents that we have there from January to December, with the peak being in September. Right, I believe as we go through the slides, you'll see which groups and which countries were hit the most and hit the hardest in particular. Right, I don't disclose the company names, or I try not to disclose like what, even if it's public sector, I try not to disclose, what departments or ministries or anything like that. If it's private, I try not to disclose. We focus more on the groups, their TTPs, their threats, or their tactics, techniques, and procedures, operations. Look at their intel. It really is just more from an observatory perspective where we try to let you all know how these groups operate, what they do, how they attack, who they attack, what happens after they attack, etc. All right, so before I go any further, Anish, you want to just jump in here on something that, you any specific trends that you might have seen for 2024 that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's no shortage of incidents to talk about when we look at the year so far. But what I wanted to maybe touch base on, and I know we might talk about it a little bit later on, is one of the main reasons why um, these compromises have been happening. It's and I don't know. You can let me know if you see the same thing on your end, but information stealer malware, right? Or as a result of info stealer malware, right? So that bit of precursor activity where credentials are stolen and it gets sold somewhere on the dark web, and we see a lot in a lot of these instances. The threat actor is using valid VPN credentials to log in.
Mm-hmm.
And because there are no controls around the VPN, whether that's, controls around where it's geographically where you're logging in from and timing and which users are logged into, all the different things. That seems to be one of the most frequent ways it's happening right now, at least in the attacks that we've dealt with. Because why hack anything when we could just log in?
Correct. Correct. That actually right there pretty much sums it up. And a lot of people too, when they think about the hacking aspect of it, they think that you sit down in the dark rooms and stuff like we are in right now, and we have, well, I'm surrounded by about 6 screens and keyboards and this and that and tapping and programming and stuff. But it really is as simple as some people just logging on to certain forums or the groups, even sometimes on a Telegram chat, and you can just buy these credentials. So instead of doing all that work in particular that Anish was talking about, you just buy these credentials and you're able to log right into the system. Alex, jump in here and tell me what you think on the pen testing side of things and what you've seen and noticed so far.
One of the biggest things that we do notice is that the basics aren't being followed, and that's where some of these things are being done easily now. Not just the fact that you could just get these credentials so much easier. One of the reasons that you could get it so much easier now is basic configurations are not adapted or not altered on these systems. For example, I've seen deployments where massive companies have deployed thousands of dollars in like Fortinet equipment or Cisco or Palo Alto, all these big brands. Default configurations still remain.
Mm-hmm.
And these threat actors look at this from outside and just be like, okay, well, I know exactly where to pass to dump these credentials out without even having to attack the system. And these are companies are none the wiser. So that's one of the major things we see where the default configurations, the basic things like patching the system or just reviewing and no access to systems aren't being.
I think that's something really important that you mentioned there, because not to pick on any one of the vendors there, because if you follow the news, you'll realize that all the vendors probably getting hit or working on something. That's just the way that life goes. But these configurations, these default configurations, that's maybe one of the top five, I would say, in my opinion, the easiest ways for threat actors to get inside. And a lot of people would say, that you could find a lot of these things quite easily through Shodan and stuff. Yes, you can find some of the things through Shodan, but a lot of the things that you would have found, for example, open systems with older systems and stuff, a lot of them are actually pretty locked down, in particular. So sometimes you have a lot of people saying, well, they use Shodan and they found this threat and that threat and the other threat. I think I myself, Alex, and especially Anish, is very much aware of all of these threats that you could find out there. But I wanted to mention something else about a group in particular called Scattered Spider that you all may have heard about. So apart from the technical aspects of it, and also the ease of just purchasing credentials, Scattered Spider, which is, again, another terrifying group that you have out there, they were pretty notorious, especially with attacks. I think it was MGM and one of those studios in Las Vegas or something as well. But the way that they go about getting access is just purely through social engineering. And for those of you that may not be aware, social engineering is where you just ask a bunch of questions, you write questions, and you also maybe try to impersonate someone based on those questions. For example, what they do is that they contact help desk, and through help desk, they will maybe pretend to be, an employee and say, well, I've forgotten my VPN credentials, or, so they wouldn't just start from there. They would have done all their homework and research to see who it is they would be targeting and using and stuff, and then just through social engineering alone. So far, we have it as buying credentials, right? Because they're the info stealers, and info stealers is something that we want to touch on a lot in a future webinar. I'll come back to it with a couple of questions to Anish in a while. But you have the info stealers, you have the default configurations or the weak configurations. I have seen a couple instances where you have firewall configs like any, and that's kind of terrifying. And these are companies that I would say are large companies, but the thing is, the business heads will only know what they are being told by the tech. So this is where sometimes you have that, not sometimes, but I think all the time, you have that gap between the tech people and the business heads and so on. So there needs to be a little bridging of that gap right there. And I would say cybersecurity is not an afterthought. I was looking at a little presentation by it's big shot man himself, Mr. Tracy Hackshaw. And he did a talk on that cybersecurity can't just be an afterthought. It has to be included from the development stage. Going back to the info stealer, Anish, any in particular that you saw affecting the Caribbean in particular? Redline, yeah, off the bat, Redline, yeah.
Redline's always number one. Luma is always up there as well.
Redline, Luma.
I would say those are the main two. When we look at dumps on the dark web of credentials and all these different things,
Yeah.
They're always either one of the two. There's some other like some ones that do pop up. But the tricky part about it is that when it came to the Luma variant, there was a significant law enforcement effort globally to bring them down. They were down for a grand total of 2 days. And then they jumped back up again and started doing the same thing that they were doing, right? And I will give the statistic. I've given the statistic publicly before. I will give the statistic again. For 2025 so far, as a direct result of InfoStealer malware, there have been upwards of 33,000 credentials related to the Caribbean posted to the dark web for sale.
Just the Caribbean.
That's also
Redline. I think Redline was non-operational at the moment, right?
They did, yeah. They're one of them that, again, law enforcement effort, and
yeah,
it's them just recollecting themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have that recollection and then rebranding, because I think this is where it gets to like the affiliates of the ransomware groups. Let me just hop across to the next slide there one time too, because these ransomware groups, a lot of them operate as a RAS, ransomware as a service. So you all might know about SaaS, which is software as a service, right? But we have RAS, right? Ransomware as a service. And this is where it gets very, very dangerous. So we actually have a complete webinar again on Thursday lunchtime where we go into RAS in detail, because there's so much that I want to talk about that. But it's basically where you have affiliates, talented people joining these groups, right? Of course, I don't know what they have to go through, but sometimes they have to go through a lot to become an affiliate. And these affiliates could even reach out to technical staff inside organizations and say, would you like to give us access? Would you like to install this flash drive in your organization? And we'll give you a cut of the ransom. So the groups themselves, they may take anywhere from 20%, 40, 60%, depending on the group itself. But the payout to the affiliate was usually very, very high. Sometimes I think Lockbit at one point was giving up to 80% of the ransom, should they collect the ransom. And a lot of the times when you hear or you look at the list of countries that were hit and stuff there, and how many times, like Trinidad and Tobago for 2024 was 4 times so far. This is only the countries that were hit, and these are the only incidents where the companies or the governments didn't pay, right? So for the ones that did pay, they would not be listed, but of course the data was still breached. It's just that I don't think we don't have any legislation right now and stuff that you will with GDPR and under the SEC and stuff, where you're supposed to come out and divulge information about breaches and so on. So the entire reports and the reporting that we do is only on the companies that didn't pay. These are victims. This is another reason why I don't list the name, or I don't mention the name of companies unless it's already been reported in the press and stuff, published already. I'm not about going and calling the name of a company, because again, these are victims.
And that's perfect. I just want to add one thing there, Shiva, in terms of 2024. And it's something that, I mean, you mentioned it just now, but just to drive it home in that not every ransomware attack gets posted to PR sites. Right? So when you look at the PR sites, and the PR sites might be saying 10, there's a very large likelihood that that true number is actually a lot more. Because as I mean, based on your chart here, we have 4 recorded for 2024. Based on my chart, I have 9 recorded for 2024. And again, it just goes to show that there's, even though there are places where you could go and find information on the dark web, there's still a lot happening that doesn't get posted.
That is absolutely correct, because even I myself, yeah, I put 4 there, but I know about way more than 4, because sometimes a lot of companies would contact us to ask, can you help with this? Can I be put on to someone in CSIRT who can help with this? And it doesn't just go to Trinidad. I know about several other countries that were hit, and they just did not make that leak site. Now, the ransomware groups, they have their own reasons for doing that, whether they just want to stay off the radar, or they don't want other groups to know, or they may be affiliated with, they have a ton of reasons inside of it. That's its whole ecosystem. And if you made their own version of Young and Restless going on in the background there, I think I gave away my age there. But Lockbit in particular, we have we have 2 webinars coming up specifically with some of these groups here. One is on Lockbit and the rise and fall, and one is on the latest one, which I'm also terrified of, which is the Killin ransomware group. It's spelled Quillin, but as far as I know, it's pronounced Killin. Any of y'all want to jump in before I go a little bit into Lockbit?
Not particularly. I mean, the only thing I will add on to that is, like I mentioned before, just for what you said, a basic point. There are a lot, on both yourself and Nisha, that there are a lot of them I could say personally that I have interacted with, have been breached, and is not announced anywhere. Not even on some of these ransomware gang sites, it's mentioned. So unless you know someone, there's a breach. So there's a lot of instances where your data, individuals' data, is out there on the internet.
Correct.
Even though the breach occurred, that no one mentioned it, and you're thinking like, how did this get out there? And if you do enough digging, you would realize that where it came from.
And to add to that a bit, right? So I spend a lot of time on forums, like especially breach forums, which reach whatever version by now. At this point, I assume it's just run by law enforcement. But breach forums and ramps and exploit forums and stuff like that, they have tons of breaches that took place, and they list some as proof, and they usually tell you if you're willing to pay and a certain amount of Bitcoin or Monero or whatever it is, you get access to the full list. So sometimes you have persons, or threat actors, I should say, they buy access to those, and they could also sell that access back, on Telegram sites or their own forums. So this again is where you have those access brokers. So you have a lot of affiliates, for example, they don't have to do any work. They go to these access brokers and be like, okay, do you have anything on this company, that company, other company? Sure, we have all of this here. It starts, Redline was selling access from as low as 100 US per month. So imagine for 100 US per month, and you have access to all of this information, as Anish was talking about there, and at least up to what, 33,000 Caribbean credentials, right? To whatever different companies, private, public, etc. So the affiliates, they work hand in hand with access brokers, who would also look at a lot of these forums to see where can we find credentials. So it's not just that you have to look at the ransomware groups. It's just that I focus on the ransomware groups. But you have so many breaches per day that it's just tiresome, and I can't work on all these at the same time. So Lockbit was the main terror, I would say, for quite some years. I think they were operating for about 4 years nonstop before law enforcement had this huge operation that took them down again for, I guess, a couple of days or a week. They came back up, they were taken down, they came back up, they were taken down. Recently, I saw some activity where I think the last I heard of them was Lockbit version 3. That was where they were really, really active. Lockbit 3 was where all the action happened, I should say, across the Caribbean, especially with Trinidad and Tobago. But they revamped into Lockbit 4, and I'm seeing information about a Lockbit 5 out now. All right, so I think next week we'll do some stuff on Lockbit. We'll probably try to merge Lockbit and Lynx, because Lynx was pretty much active in the Caribbean last year, but it's still active this year as well. Not so much Bian Lian. I haven't heard about 8base since I think maybe December. Was it last year? Yeah, before I can't remember. But I
23, I
think
think.
it was what?
2023, I think
23,
was the last
December
time.
2023. I think was the last I heard about 8base. There were rumors that they hit a government organization. I'm not going to say what, who, and where, but that was the last I heard of them before I think law enforcement jumped inside of there. Hunters decided to collaborate with Lapsus Group and Scattered Spider Group to have something called, I think it's Shiny Hunters, which is a combination of all of these. And when we look at the ransomware as a service and affiliates on Thursday, that's something we want to look at, where you have the ecosystem, like I mentioned. There's nothing there are no rules, right? They all communicate however they want to communicate on forums. They all join forces. They all disband at any point in time and rebrand, regroup, combine forces, stuff like that. So the sectors in particular, insurance, finance, insurance, we have some tech, we have legal as well. And this is where sometimes you have a lot of companies being compromised, because where you have, let's say, logistics and tech and legal and stuff, you have a lot of larger companies out there, even banks and stuff, that they take services of some companies out there. Sometimes these companies may have been breached. So again, it's very important that if you work for a company that you know uses a lot of vendors and their services, this is where it's important to do something called a threat risk assessment for each vendor and their services, on themselves as a company, to see, how do they handle data, what happens to your data if you breach, were you breached already, right? So before I go any further, just to give a little bit about Lockbit, because Lockbit has actually held my attention for all of 2023 and 2024 in particular. They were one of the biggest ransomware as a service models, and they were around since maybe 2019, right? I think globally they had over like 2,500 victims. And these are just the ones that we actually know about. Imagine the ones that we've never heard about. But again, one of the reasons why Lockbit was so big is because of the affiliates, and the affiliates were paid quite handsomely. Affiliates were given something like 80% of the actual ransom. And Lockbit, I think, maybe starts from 200,000 US, go up to 5 to 2 million, somewhere around there, right? And a lot of people are asking me, how come in Trinidad in particular, we don't get hit more often? And I will actually say that may be because of the access to Forex, because the access to Forex is limited, therefore access to crypto is also very limited. So it's very difficult to pay these ransomware, even if a company wanted to. Right, so they have evolved quite a bit. The biggest operation by law enforcement came in 2024, last year in February. That was Operation Kronos, I think. But Lockbit still managed to keep going. They are still around, much to my surprise. But what kept Lockbit going is really the affiliates. And there's nothing usually that says affiliate can't just work for one organization and not, criminal organization, and work for others as well. So this is why you have so many ransomware groups popping up. So every month I do a ransomware report. I have to do the one for September actually, but I monitor at any point in time at least 50 ransomware groups and the amount of attacks they have per month, I guess. And there's no sign of the ransomware groups slowing down in particular. Guys, chime in here with what you think about the ransomware groups and if you're seeing like a significant growth in ransomware groups as opposed to what we had before.
You go first, Anish?
Yes, I'm sure I'll go first. Yes, there is a growth, and it's driven by one. Let's say, I mean, Lockbit traditionally has had a lot of affiliates, right? And then some of those affiliates might spin off and start doing their own thing, and then it becomes its own sub brand somewhere, right? And while they're using the Lockbit payload and the same service, their techniques are different, their tactics are different, and basically you essentially identify them by an entirely different name, right? So there's a lot of that happening, and as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of infighting as well in between them, right? These are organized crime groups that they have turf, they have who they go after, and they get very territorial when they cross each other. So there's a lot of that going on as well. Unfortunately, we get caught in the middle of it sometimes. One thing I would say, on the note of the law enforcement action that you reference against Lockbit, and it's something that not many people know about, but when these law enforcement actions do happen, there is global coordination after the fact, right? So if it is that law enforcement agency X is the one that did the investigation and did the takedown and that sort of thing, they would not just take all of that information and keep it to themselves, right? That gets shared through the different communities, whether that be Interpol, whether that be the CSIT community, however it is, into all the different nations, right? So I'll give an example in terms of, there was with one of the older versions of Lockbit, when that activity happened, we were provided with the keys for some of the victims that we had here in Trinidad and Tobago, and we were able to unlock the data that fortunately the victims would have backed up the encrypted data somewhere in the hopes that it could eventually be unlocked, and it happened because that's how the law enforcement and the CSIRT and the national cybersecurity community operates, right? Not everything is done not everything is done with a news article about it, but it does happen and it does work quite well.
I think that's what a lot of people don't know, because I've seen so many calls recently that TT certs, Jamaica certs, JA cert, JA certs, and the others, they need to work together with CARICOM impacts and this and that. But I think it's quite obvious to see that there is collaboration, not just regionally, but on an international level, right? But I want to just I know this might be throwing you on the spot a little bit, but you mentioned something about the encryption keys there, right? So where we have quantum computing coming up, and you keep reading that quantum computing is going to break encryption. So okay, fine. It means that we might have to do, well, not me, but the brilliant people that come up with this stuff. They have some work to do. But I was also thinking that if you have quantum encryption, you might also be able to have like quantum decryption as well with quantum computing. So I am wondering what your thoughts might be on the types of encryption that we see with the ransomware groups and quantum computing, and how you all think that might help, I guess, where you have this level of tight encryption coming from these ransomware groups. And it was a hard one, sorry.
No, funny enough, you bring it up because I recently shared an article from Signal, the makers of the Signal communication app, where they have already started implementing quantum-based encryption for their own communication channel. So they are already preparing for when that day comes. Whether it's breakable or unbreakable is another debate story.
Yeah.
But so one incident that I did look into was payload that was being delivered to get the remote access to the ransomware gang. It was a custom written SSH shell written in Go that was embedded in a PDF, right? Just that combination of algorithms to get that to work was an interesting look. So when you have something like quantum computing coming up, where you're able to introduce brand new, unseen, undisclosed even algorithms to handle encryption algorithms to compute these encryptions, it's going to be a game changer from a security perspective. From not just from a defense or hiding your communication, but just enabling something like protection of the data itself, like encrypting data itself. It's going to be a huge thing from a defense perspective and even an attack perspective, because we will get so much more complex algorithms now being implemented that, I mean, if you don't have the quantum computing power on your side to break this thing, then you might as well just move on and start over fresh.
Anish, what are you thinking about this one?
I mean, I don't see how to put it. Until quantum computing becomes more commercially available, right? We have some time where we could rest somewhat easy.
Right? How does it? What's the time frame you think we have though? That's my question.
I don't know. I can't give any time frame on that, right? But when we get to that point where I mean, traditionally we tell people, all right, crypto communications, encrypt your data, store it securely, X, Y, and Z, have passwords that are X to X long, whatever, right? Um, with quantum computing, there comes a point where all of that advice doesn't matter anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Similar to what Alex just said,
Oh,
that advice doesn't matter anymore. So would require a paradigm shift from the security perspective, and it will change a lot of what we knew to be tried and true techniques. I just can't tell you when.
Mhm.
Hopefully it's when I retire, but very doubtful. Right?
The
I,
reason
I,
why
I
why sorry to cut you off, Alex. The reason why I was asking that, right, is because remember like a year or two ago when we were talking about AI, and then we were talking about how AI will be used by threat actors and ransomware groups. And not only dark web, you have so many different versions of AI that could be used, which are being used to help exploit. So that's why I was thinking, it was like we thought we would have some more time before these things came on. And um before I let Alex continue, right? I really want to ask you also about if you all have seen any companies that actually use their own encryption to protect their data as well. So sorry about that, Alex. You go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say my rule of thumb is always assume the state-sponsored groups already have this
Mhm.
technology in place.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just assume it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's true or not, it's debatable. Just go with the assumption that they have this. So
Yeah, because it's coming at
prepare
some
for it.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they are funded to do it. But to answer your question about custom algorithms for encryption, in the Caribbean, I haven't seen. That's
Yeah.
just from my perspective. I haven't seen companies sit and require custom encryption or even fund any kind of custom encryption for their own communication. I've seen custom signatures, of course, that's a common thing
Mhm.
that people would use for when you authorize documents. But to say dedicated encryption algorithm or anything like that, it's not something that I've seen. And I don't think we might see anything like that. I don't know if you'll agree with that one, Anish, but don't think we see them because the resources required from a funding, from a personnel skill set level within the region. Again, I could be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree with you. I think the closest thing you would get to like to what you're describing there, um, would be custom keys and HSMs, right? But again, you're buying an HSM from somebody, you're not creating an algorithm, right? So that's probably the closest thing you're going to get, and really, who of us could really afford these HSM devices, right? Banks, big ginormous companies.
Correct. And the reason why I brought this up to is because I was once asked if I think that threat actors would consider the Caribbean low-hanging fruit. So I said that is actually something that you could look into because you have a lot of the countries that may also have this exchange rate issue and access to forex and stuff. That becomes a major issue there too, because I mentioned that forex. One thing to get forex to even pay a ransom is fine, but you have the forex that's required to run the subscriptions and the hardware and the training and all these fancy implementation. Sometimes even to just to hire the right staff, is considered an expense too. So I mean I see a lot of countries. Yes, it might be looked upon as low hanging fruit, but I don't know what y'all think about that one.
Alex, go ahead, man. I'll come after.
Similar, similar position. Just last week, was someone asking about why they think the Caribbean is being targeted more. In their eyes, the Caribbean is being targeted more. As of course, the Caribbean is being targeted more compared to what it was 10 years ago, particularly
Hmm.
because no one really saw the Caribbean as a target. Not that it wasn't low hanging fruit, just that it wasn't considered as a target
A
because
profitable
you had
target, possibly. Yeah.
yeah, you had the targets outside the Caribbean. But now, as all these companies outside are starting to implement the protection mechanisms to reduce their potential for being attacked,
Hmm.
and us here in the Caribbean, we haven't taken that step, even though we saw what was going on outside. A lot of us did not take those steps to improve our posture. So now these gangs recognize that, hey, Caribbean, Latin American area is literally, like you said, low-hanging fruit. Now we
Low-hanging
don't have
fruits,
to
yeah.
fight with the bigger games now. We have these smaller fish that we could go after that potentially may not be as profitable, but it is a profit.
Mm-hmm.
It's still return something. Even if the profit may not be we get cash, but we leak data, and now that data then feeds downstream to other types of attacks, like social engineering
Yeah,
campaigns,
yeah.
fraudulent campaigns, all these different things. It feeds the downstream activities. So lower hanging fruit, I don't want to say lower hanging fruit, but because we were complacent in it, we do become technically the lower hanging fruit at that.
Mm-hmm. Anish,
No,
talk
yes,
to me.
yeah. So I just wanted to, and I agree that everything Alex just said, right? Um, I just want to change in the way how we refer to it, in terms that we're not necessarily, yes, we are the low hanging fruit, we are, right? But there is a newer way that I think we should call it. And Latin America and the Caribbean is the test bed for
Hmm.
these businesses, right? Because of everything that we already talked about. We're not as mature in terms of the systems that we have in place, whether that is, from policies all the way up to implementation of systems, right? Um, and it's where a lot of these smaller groups that don't have a dark web PR site and these
Yeah.
smaller affiliates kind of test what they could do and test how they get into it. And if they make money, they make money. If they don't make money, as Alex said, they
Mm-hmm.
feed some downstream industry, right? And there's also another thing that we need to consider when we look at particularly ransomware incidents is that sometimes the ransomware incidents are masks for something else, right?
Yeah.
In that, yes, there is, encryption of data and whatnot, but what we didn't see is that, before that, they went after this specific user on your system and exfiltrated X amount of data from this user system somewhere across the world, right? So it could be a mask for some other operation, maybe a nation state actor posing as some sort of cyber criminal group, to get to get access to whatever it might be. And the reason why I say that is not because it is something I've imagined in my mind. It's something that we've seen play out, um, at least here in Trinidad. I'm not sure about the rest of the Caribbean, but at the very least here.
Yeah, that
We
you
have
actually raised some
geopolitical
pretty good
context.
points there. I um I remember even reading a hypothetical scenario about large companies, even if they wanted to you know be not so very legit, and you could even you know get the ransomware into your organization by themselves, and then have that ransom paid to maybe even someone that they know to extort the company or something like that too. So it's not just cut and dry. It's not just always that you blame Lockbit, because of course you can get these encryptors that various groups use, and that's the point of being affiliate sometimes. And a lot of hacking groups, they use the encryptors and the malware from some of these groups as well. So it yeah, a lot of really, you really do have a lot of different scenarios there. And I think too, to add to that, when these companies, they put when these ransomware groups, they put the company information out there, it really is to make sure that they suffer some sort of I don't know, repercussion or something that you could call it there. Because sometimes some companies, what I've realized in some local attacks too, regional attacks, I would say, is that the ransomware groups, they actually get sometimes very personal in the notes that they would put about the companies. And it shows sometimes the extent of the documentation that they would have gotten their hands on, or it could be just an affiliate who might even be, working for the company, that has a lot of information, dirty information, I would say, on some of these companies. But sometimes they would know specifically what type of information, apart from just financial, to put out there to have customers and clients lose confidence, I would say, inside the organization. And one of them in particular I keep seeing is Quillen. Killin, sorry, it's spelled Quillin, but it's Killin, right? So Killin has been attacking, I would say, near relentlessly compared to what we saw before because it's only October, right? I don't even have the full stats for the year yet, right? We still have almost 3 months to go till the end of the year, but at 18 incidents already, recorded incidents on the dark web. These are only what were posted on the dark web, not as we were talking about by smaller groups and the ones that were reported. These are just 18 reported incidents that are you can see on the dark web, up from 13 incidents from last year, 2024, right? So it's a significant uptick that you have there. And I'm seeing, I think Barbados is getting hit really hard right now. Right, but again, too, that might be because they do have a pretty booming economy and stuff like that. So Barbados, Jamaica, and stuff like that. So this is just from Q1 to Q3. So the one common group that we have here is Lynx in particular, but the heavy hitter is the Killing ransomware group. Recently, we saw Medusa as well. I think especially with Killing, Akira, Medusa, the FBI and CISA in the US, they have actually released some excellent documentation about these groups and their threats, tactics, procedures, how they operate, how you can protect against them and stuff. But it really is a cat and mouse game of, 2 steps behind and the other one is 10 steps forward at any point in time. Because as Alex would have mentioned, the funding that you would need sometimes for people to just carry out certain things or develop certain things, whether even if it be malware and stuff. Remember, some of these groups, they rake in millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes per attack, sometimes overall. I think in 2024, one of the biggest ones I saw was there was a $75 million ransom US. That ransom was paid by a Fortune 500 company. This was 75 million US you're talking about here. And I did not see much of that group again after that because I assume either they they decide to just jump ship or call it a day and retire with 75 million US, right?
I'm not.
Well,
Okay.
What's any yeah, you'll give me input here about what you think about what you've seen this year so far.
it's interesting.
To say the least. It's
To say
terrifying.
the least,
Terrifying.
it is interesting because
Yeah,
you're
what?
seeing now. Sorry, Anish, was that?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say what you see now, countries that have kind of remained off the radar, like we mentioned from before, you start seeing more of them. That was what I was going to say.
Okay.
No,
Anisha,
I think for me, what is frightening, and I mean, as professionals, we know it, right? We know about how threat actors use living off the land techniques and all these different things and your own tools against it and that sort of stuff. But sometimes it is genuinely amazing to see just how well it's done during an attack, right? Where everything that you would typically flag is done through some legitimate process somewhere, right? And it bypasses security mechanisms. Your EDR doesn't catch it. I mean, there's a new technique right now where they're installing their own EDR on top of yours, right?
Yeah.
To disable yours. If particularly when yours, and it works well when yours is not properly configured, right? Going back to something Alex and yourself, Shiva, mentioned earlier. So I think it's my own professional curiosity that has me amazed sometimes. I mean, attacks are not something we ever want to have happen to us, but you go through it as a professional and you see how the work is done, you could really, almost kind of gain a sense of appreciation for or an amazement for the techniques,
Amazement, definitely. And that's
How
what
good
Alex
it
was
is,
saying. That's
you should say.
the healthy. I think both of you are saying the healthy obsession. Because I mean, from a technical and a business perspective, it truly is absolutely amazing because they will map out the entire org structure and know exactly all the processes that happen in your organization. They will know exactly who reports to whom. Sometimes in a large organization, you have people asking other people, well, I need information about so and so. Who do I know? They know all of this stuff intimately. And then to top it off, they use your very own tools against you, like even something like PowerShell. When I'm sure you'll be able to see this when you look through some logs and stuff and you're seeing regular basic PowerShell commands. Again, stuff that should actually be locked down and not, be run by admin and stuff. But at that point, it's too late, because when these folks get inside your organization, they already have admin and root access, especially to do something what we call lateral movement. And lateral movement is just where they start from one item and go through the entire organization, infect everything, they exfiltrate everything long before you even know that there's a clue inside of there. And it happens with some of the largest organizations in the world. So to ask, what can we do to prevent this? I don't think it's something that you could prevent 100%, but I think one of the best things to maintain is to have staff and training, staff awareness, training and stuff, best practices. Please, for the love of all that is holy, best practices. We have so many guys from NIST and even TTC suit. They send out regular stuff and preach this stuff daily, right? But there's only so much that we could do. But Killing in particular, I am genuinely terrified of the Killing ransomware group, because just a couple things for those of you all who don't know, right? We have a whole webinar about Killing coming up next week or the week after. I can't remember. But they've been around for a while, since maybe 2022. And they have at least 300 global victims for now. I'm expecting to see this increase substantially towards the end of the year. Sometimes their ransoms go up to asking 10 million US per ransom. And that's just what we know about. I don't know, some, but I think Barbados has been experiencing quite an uptick where Killing is concerned, and it's across several sectors, not just one or two sectors. I think throughout the Caribbean, Killing has hit about at least 7 organizations so far, right? And out of 18 in total, just between January to now October, it's a little bit scary to check and see. I have a lot of friends and acquaintances and stuff on LinkedIn, and they say that they get a little terrified when they get a notification from Shiva, because they're always worried about who was hit and what's happening out there. But it really is just to spread, awareness and information and stuff. There's no way I think any one person or group can stop Killing ransomware, because I'm absolutely sure with my head on a block that law enforcement globally has been trying, but they certainly are a force to be reckoned with. And because it's every sector, it's critical infrastructure as well, right? We have a whole panel discussion to end off Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I think October 31st, where I hope Anish will join us again. But we have quite a few people on that panel about protecting Caribbean critical infrastructure, if it's even possible at this point, right? But Killing is I mean, I guess as the name implies, they are making a killing at this point in time, right? No pun intended. All right, so we're almost to the end of it, and I have, a few implications and recommendations there just to end off things there. So the implications that we have with all this ransomware attacks is that obviously you have supply chain disruptions, whether it be logistics, tourism. We have the issue of the data leaks, because sometimes you realize that in order for a group to do some serious damage, they don't just care about posting the data of the company itself, but the other organizations that company is associated with. They try to post a lot of PII, the personally identifiable information, like passport biodata, ID cards, credit card information, email addresses, passwords, physical addresses, right? Financials, losses, all of these things. Anything that can do damage to not just the company, but the other vendors and companies and clients as well, and especially clients, right? So we see in that, you have a lot of large organizations. They operate across the Caribbean. Sometimes the food suppliers and technical companies. We have a lot of large corporations that do. So we have the issue there too with if it's a compromise in just one location. I would think that you have to consider it as in everybody else was compromised. But that's just from my perspective. Guys, what you all think about the implications? Anything that you want to add there as well?
The downstream impact, like you mentioned from before, that's one of the major things, because a lot of people don't realize how integrated other entities are with companies across the region. sure, you may get a breach here that occurs with one company, and you may think, okay, yeah, that's happening in it's an Antigua or wherever that may happen. But that company there may have had links with another company that this is prior to them that they use for shipping or whatever it may be. And therefore, now that person's information, and other company's information, is now sitting with potential target. So now you're now becoming a next target now to be attacked and leak information from you, and then it just goes on and on and on and on and on. I mean, there was one investigation that I was a part of where even though the attack occurred in one island and they were able to compromise that office and then islands, so the affiliated company that was not even on the same island, they literally hopped across and started to compromise the other operations on the other island. So the biggest implication is that domino effect that does occur when the breach does occur itself.
Because just to add to that, you have to assume that there is major lateral movement. It doesn't just stay isolated with one VLAN and, you know, they didn't jump this zone from the firewall to the others and stuff. I think I would never dare assume that that these things are isolated, and I don't think any company should. Anish, let me hear your thoughts on this.
So, the broader implications are horrendous most times. Because exactly what Alex said, we don't realize sometimes how connected an entity is with its partners, with its suppliers, sometimes with its customers, whatever it might be, and things get out of hand very, very, very quickly. The only thing I would add when it comes to implications here is obviously I'm biased, right? I work for the Ministry of Homeland Security, so there's also a national security implication when it comes to these things happening, right? Sometimes when you think an obscure entity gets compromised, it's because that obscure entity is providing some sort of critical service to some part of the government, or to some critical end, or to some other piece of critical infrastructure, right? And there is that cascading effect in that, you know, this critical service that this one obscure company is providing is linked to what a critical infrastructure operator is doing. And now that critical infrastructure operator needs to scale back in some way, shape, or form, or they need to shut down a piece of their operations. So we move the effect from just in the digital space to feeling a physical effect, right? And that there now directly relates to our ability to secure ourselves as a nation and to keep our economy stable and things of that nature, right? So it's never to lose that bigger picture, that bigger sense that it's really a national security issue.
Yeah. These, I mean, there's we could go on and on with this all day, but this is why I have so many webinars, because I decided to just split up things for everyone to sort of benefit from. The recommendations, we all know these already. Just patch, continuously patch, train, awareness. There is massive collaboration happening. Even though I have it as a recommendation, there actually is a lot of collaboration with TT-CERT, JASCERT, CARICOM impacts, different ministries, different countries. Could there be more? Sure, always. There's always room for improvement, right? But
as a point, I'm sorry to cut you off. Just as a
no,
point,
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
On the CARICOM impacts, they exist, and it's on their website, right? So it's not hard to find. There exists a unit called the Cyber Fusion Unit, right? That ties in all the data from all the different CSIRTs of the islands into one central point, right? Where we could make some very holistic decisions. You know, so I'm just saying, could it be better? Yes. Is it being made better? It currently is. In the next couple of weeks, you CARICOM and the new CARICOM cybersecurity and cybercrime action plan in the next couple of weeks, and that's going to highlight some very big things for the region, and it's something that we should pay attention to when it does drop.
So I don't have the link for CARICOM, but I guess if we search for CARICOM Fusion, we should be able to find it. I just decided to put TTC-CERT site here because, of course, we have Mr. TTC-CERT himself there. right? But again, big shout out to all the folks across at the TTC. So some really wonderful people. I think I've met all of them. But yeah, great folks there. To end things up, folks, it is just after 1 minute after one. We have some more stuff coming up. The next one is on Thursday, the 9th of October, with ransomware as a service. So I want to jump a bit more into lockbit services and killing and some of these that offer some publicly, some privately, ransomware as a service and how it goes about. We'll jump a little bit more into the access brokers and see, why ransomware has become so popular, and this is actually one of the reasons, right? It's not just that the ransomware groups are becoming so mighty and powerful. Yes, they are to some extent because you have the combination of and merging of groups, but the affiliates and the affiliate programs that they have, this is one of the ways that it's becoming so easy for organizations to become compromised, right? So we have a lot of them to come there. The last one will be a panel discussion where I have quite a few interesting people um, at that one. But yeah, folks, thank you so much for joining us. You can take a picture of this if you just want to email, contact us. Signing up for these as well, you just go to the website, cfsi.co, scroll down to CyberFence. I think I have the links for at least webinars 2 and 3 up already. Hopefully by next week, I'll be able to put all of the rest. But we look forward to seeing you all there. I think we had up to about 200 attendees, which is mind-blowing for me. People actually want to hear me speak that much. Maybe it's just Alex and Anish. I don't know. Doesn't have to be me. Right? But folks, thank you.
They're just yours. Eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. On that note, gents, you have anything to say before we wrap up?
Be safe.
No,
Stay safe.
yeah, stay safe, stay secure. You know how to reach us if you need us.
Okay. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And we shall see you all on Thursday. If you all want to sign up for the webinar, just head over to cfsi.co. And that's it. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.